John was driving through the countryside on a stormy night. The rain was pouring down, and the wind was howling. Suddenly, his car came to a halt, and he realized that something was wrong. He got out of the car and tried to see if he could fix it, but it was no use. He was stranded in the middle of nowhere. As he walked down the road, he saw an old house in the distance. It was the only house for miles around, so he decided to approach it. He knocked on the door, and to his relief, someone answered. The person who answered the door was a woman in her late 50s. She had wild eyes and a crazed look on her face. John immediately felt uneasy, but he was desperate for help, so he asked if he could use their phone. The woman told him that they didn't have a phone, but she invited him in and offered him some food. John reluctantly accepted the invitation, and he followed the woman inside. The inside of the house was dark and musty, and it smelled of mold and decay. There were strange symbols and pictures on the walls, and John couldn't understand what they meant. He also noticed that there were no windows in the house. As John sat down to eat, he noticed that the food was barely fit for a dog. It was stale bread and a strange stew that tasted like it had been sitting there for days. He tried to make conversation with the woman, but she didn't seem to understand what he was saying. She just stared at him with her wild eyes. As John finished his meal, he decided that he needed to leave. He thanked the woman and told her that he had to go. But as soon as he got up, he felt a sharp pain in the back of his head, and everything went black. When John woke up, he realized that he was in a different room. He was tied to a chair, and he couldn't move. He heard strange noises coming from the other side of the door, and he realized that there were other people in the house. John tried to free himself, but the ropes were too tight. He screamed for help, but nobody came. Hours passed, and John started to feel hungry and thirsty. He realized that he was completely at the mercy of this strange family. Days turned into weeks, and John's captivity became a living nightmare. The family would torture him mentally and physically, playing mind games and inflicting pain whenever they got the chance. They would speak in a language he couldn't understand, and John felt like he was losing his mind. But one day, the family made a mistake. They left the door to his room unlocked for just a moment, and John took his chance. He managed to break free from the ropes and ran as fast as he could, not looking back until he was miles away. John was traumatized by the experience. He couldn't believe that he had been held captive by a family of crazed individuals. He was grateful to be alive, but he knew that he would never be the same again. The experience had left a permanent scar on his psyche, and he would never take his freedom for granted again. Claire was a young, aspiring photographer with a penchant for all things vintage. One day, while browsing a dusty antique shop, she stumbled upon a captivating relic, an old camera with an ornate, weathered exterior. Intrigued by its charm, she couldn't resist purchasing it, unaware of the darkness that lay within. Excited to test her new acquisition, Claire ventured into the city, eager to capture the essence of its inhabitants. As she pressed the shutter button, a sense of unease washed over her. Little did she know that with each click, she sealed the fate of those before her lens. As Claire developed the film, her heart sank. Each photograph unveiled a haunting reality. The people she had captured were nowhere to be found. Their faces, once filled with life and vitality, now bore the grim visage of death. A chilling realization gripped her. Her camera was cursed. Consumed by guilt and terror, Claire retreated into solitude. She couldn't bear the weight of her unwittingly lethal artistry. But try as she might, she couldn't escape the power of the cursed camera. One day, driven by a desperate need for answers, Claire sought the guidance of an enigmatic psychic named Madame Evangeline. The elderly woman, adorned in flowing garments, peered deeply into Claire's eyes and revealed the camera's history. Long ago, a tormented photographer had forged a pact with dark forces. In exchange for artistic prowess, his camera became a harbinger of death. The curse had been dormant for years until it fell into Claire's hands, awakening its dreadful power once more. Madame Evangeline spoke of a way to break the curse. A sacrifice must be made. Claire's heart sank at the thought, but the lives lost due to her unwitting actions haunted her every waking moment. She knew she had to put an end to the camera's deadly legacy. With trepidation, Claire embarked on a mission to capture one final photograph, a self-portrait. As she gazed into the camera's viewfinder, she braced herself for the consequences. With a trembling hand, she pressed the shutter button, sealing her fate. In that moment, a brilliant flash engulfed the room, leaving Claire disoriented. As her vision cleared, she realized she was no longer alone. Figures emerged from the darkness, those she had unintentionally caused to perish. But instead of malevolence, their expressions held gratitude and relief. In sacrificing herself, Claire had broken the curse, freeing the souls trapped within the camera's haunting frames. The spirits faded away, leaving Claire alone with a sense of bittersweet victory. The cursed camera, now devoid of its sinister power, lay lifeless in Claire's hands. She understood the weight of the choices she had made and the price she had paid to protect others. The memory of the camera's curse would forever haunt her, a reminder of the darkness that could lurk behind the beauty of art. David's heart skipped a beat when he saw his exact replica standing on the crowded street. The doppelganger's gaze pierced through him, sending a shiver down his spine. He tried to dismiss it as a mere coincidence, but his unease grew as the doppelganger began appearing in the most unexpected places. At first, it was brief glimpses, a reflection in a storefront window, a figure in his peripheral vision. But soon, the doppelganger's presence became more persistent. David would catch sight of him lingering in the shadows, always a few steps behind. Fear consumed David's every waking moment. The doppelganger's blank expression and cold, calculating eyes sent a chill through his soul. The feeling of being watched intensified, and he became hyper-aware of the stalking presence that followed his every move. David's friends and family dismissed his claims, thinking he was losing his grip on reality. They couldn't see what he saw, the shadowy figure, the doppelganger haunting his existence. His pleas for help fell on deaf ears, leaving him isolated and vulnerable. Nightmares plagued David's sleep. He dreamt of the doppelganger's skeletal face, its elongated fingers reaching for him, a twisted grin etched across its lips. Each night, he woke in a cold sweat, dreading the return of daylight. As the stalking intensified, David's sanity began to crumble. He became a prisoner in his own home, barricading himself inside, the blinds drawn tight to keep the doppelganger's gaze at bay. But even in the darkness, he could feel its presence lurking outside, taunting him with its silent watchfulness. Days turned into weeks, and the torment continued unabated. Desperation pushed David to confront his doppelganger. He ventured out into the night, determined to unravel the mystery that held him captive. With his heart pounding in his chest, David tracked the doppelganger's movements. The streets were deserted, devoid of life. Fear mingled with adrenaline as he cornered the doppelganger in a dimly lit alleyway. Their eyes locked, and David felt a surge of surreal connection, a twisted familiarity. The doppelganger's lips curled into a malevolent smile, and David knew that he was trapped in a twisted game with a formidable opponent. In a sickening twist, David realized the doppelganger was a manifestation of his own darkness, his deepest fears personified. It was a reflection of the hidden secrets and sins he had buried deep within himself. As David confronted the doppelganger, his resolve hardened. With a defiant scream, he lunged forward, ready to face the consequences head-on. But in that instant, the doppelganger vanished, leaving David standing alone in the empty alley, his own reflection staring back at him. Exhausted and shaken, David stumbled back to his home, uncertain of what had transpired. But as he looked in the mirror, he saw a glimmer of hope, a chance for redemption, and a renewed determination to confront his own demons. In the small, secluded town of Ravenwood, a sinister darkness had begun to spread. Whispers of the undead filled the night air, and the moon cast an eerie glow upon the abandoned streets. The town's residents had vanished, leaving behind an unsettling silence that was only broken by the occasional creaking of the old wooden houses. Amelia, a brave and curious teenager, couldn't resist the temptation to investigate the mystery that had befallen her town. With a flickering flashlight in hand, she ventured into the heart of Ravenwood, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and excitement. As Amelia walked through the desolate streets, she noticed strange signs of a struggle. Broken windows, bloodstains, and discarded belongings littered the ground. She tried to ignore the gnawing dread that was building inside her, but it grew stronger with each step. Suddenly, a low, guttural growl echoed from a nearby alley. Amelia's blood turned to ice as she cautiously approached the source of the sound. Peering into the darkness, her flashlight illuminated a terrifying sight. A group of zombies, their decaying flesh hanging loosely from their bones, their vacant eyes fixated on her. Panic surged through Amelia's body as she realized the danger she was in. She turned to run, but her path was blocked by more undead creatures, their moans growing louder, their hunger evident. Trapped and outnumbered, her only option was to find a place to hide. Amelia stumbled upon an old, dilapidated house with a half-open door, her heart pounding in her chest. She darted inside, desperate to escape the clutches of the pursuing zombies. The house was filled with a putrid stench, its walls adorned with cobwebs and peeling wallpaper. It was a place frozen in time, a forgotten relic of the past. But Amelia's relief was short-lived. As she cautiously explored the house, she discovered that she was not alone. Other survivors, like her, had sought refuge within these decaying walls. Their eyes held a mixture of fear and despair, their faces pale and haggard. Whispers circulated among the survivors, tales of the zombie horde that had overtaken Ravenwood. The undead were relentless, seemingly multiplying by the hour. It was clear that their only chance of survival lay in banding together and finding a way to escape the town. Nightfall descended upon the house, and the survivors huddled together, their eyes darting to every creak and shuffle outside. The distant moans of the undead grew louder, sending shivers down their spines. They knew that time was running out, and they had to act quickly. With a determined resolve, the survivors formulated a plan, a daring escape under the cover of darkness. As the moon hung ominously in the sky, they stealthily slipped through the streets, careful to avoid detection. Each step brought them closer to freedom, their hearts racing with a mixture of hope and terror. Just as they thought they had eluded the zombies, a deafening screech shattered the silence. The undead horde descended upon them, their outstretched arms reaching for their warm flesh. The survivors fought desperately, their screams echoing through the night. In the chaos and despair, Amelia's grip on reality began to slip. She felt a cold, bony hand close around her ankle, dragging her down into the clutches of the undead. As she succumbed to the relentless grip of the zombies, her final thought was of the town she once called home, now lost to the horrors of the undead. And so, the town of Ravenwood fell into eternal darkness, its streets forever haunted by the haunting moans and ravenous hunger of the zombie horde, a chilling reminder of the horrors that lurk beyond the veil of the living. The moon hung high in the ink-black sky, casting an eerie glow over the ancient village of Kuroji. The wind whispered through the tall grass, rustling the leaves of the cherry blossom trees. In this desolate place, where the echoes of history lingered, a chilling tale was about to unfold. In the heart of Kuroji, there stood an old, decrepit shrine that had long been forgotten. Legend whispered of a cursed samurai who roamed the village, seeking vengeance for the dishonor he had suffered in life. His name was Kurojin, and his spirit was said to be trapped within the shrine, forever bound to the mortal realm. One fateful night, a young and fearless samurai named Takeshi arrived in Kuroji, unaware of the village's dark secret. Determined to prove his worth and earn a legendary reputation, Takeshi saw the abandoned shrine as an opportunity to showcase his skills and bravery. Little did he know, his journey into the shrine would awaken an ancient evil. Takeshi stepped cautiously through the shrine's entrance, his katana unsheathed and ready. The air grew heavy, and an unnatural silence descended upon him. As he ventured deeper, the walls seemed to close in, suffocating his senses. The flickering candlelight cast eerie shadows that danced along the walls, distorting reality. Suddenly, a chilling gust of wind extinguished the candles, plunging Takeshi into utter darkness. He could hear the haunting whispers of Kurojin, carried on the wind. Panic gripped his heart, but he pressed on, unwilling to succumb to fear. As he reached the inner chamber, Takeshi found himself face to face with a ghastly apparition. Kurojin, his spectral form adorned in tattered samurai armor, emanated a chilling aura of malevolence. His eyes glowed like fiery embers, and his voice echoed with rage and sorrow.
Who dares trespass upon my domain? Prepare to face the wrath of 1,000 fallen souls.
Takeshi's grip tightened around his katana as he engaged in a deadly dance with the vengeful spirit. The clash of steel filled the chamber as the living and the dead fought for dominance. Kurojin's strikes were swift and deadly, but Takeshi's determination was unwavering. In a final, desperate move, Takeshi mustered all his strength and struck Kurojin with a fierce blow. The cursed samurai let out a piercing scream that echoed through the shrine, shaking its very foundations. With a blinding flash of light, Kurojin's form disintegrated into nothingness, his vengeful spirit finally released from its eternal torment. Breathing heavily, Takeshi stood amidst the wreckage of the shrine, its curse lifted by his valiant act. The village of Kuroji would know peace once more, and the tale of the cursed samurai would be etched into the annals of history. The clock struck midnight as Lucas awoke, drenched in a cold sweat. He had been experiencing restless nights lately, plagued by vivid nightmares that seemed all too real. But tonight was different. As he lay in bed, paralyzed by fear, he noticed an eerie stillness in the air. Shadows danced on the walls, whispering secrets he couldn't decipher. Exhaustion overcame him, and his heavy eyelids surrendered to the weight of sleep. That's when the true horror began. Lucas found himself standing in the hallway of his apartment, his body moving with a purpose he couldn't comprehend. It was as if an invisible force had taken control, pulling him into the darkness. Panic surged through his veins, but he was powerless to resist. His sleepwalking episodes became more frequent, occurring almost every night. Each time he would awaken in bizarre places, abandoned warehouses, forgotten graveyards, and desolate forests. His mind was trapped in a twisted nightmare, his body a mere puppet in the hands of an unknown puppeteer. Lucas's once lively spirit was now consumed by fear. He sought answers, desperate for an escape from this macabre dance. He consulted doctors, seeking medical explanations for his sleepwalking, but the tests revealed no abnormalities. One night, driven by a surge of determination, Lucas installed security cameras in his apartment. He hoped to capture evidence of the sinister force that haunted him. As the days passed, the recordings held no clues, just hours of mundane sleep. Doubt began to creep into his mind. Was he losing his sanity, or was this a curse beyond the realm of rationality? Then, one chilling evening, as the moonlight bathed his room, the security cameras captured something that sent shivers down Lucas's spine. A hooded figure emerged from the shadows, gliding effortlessly towards his slumbering form. Its eyes gleamed with a malevolence that pierced his soul. The entity reached out a spectral hand and caressed his cheek, relishing in his fear. The footage left no room for doubt. Lucas was not alone in his torment. His nightmares had taken on a tangible form, an otherworldly entity that reveled in his misery. But how could he sever ties with the ethereal grip that held him captive? Summoning his last reserves of courage, Lucas delved into ancient tomes and whispered legends. The answer he sought lay hidden within the pages of forbidden knowledge. He discovered a ritual, a risky endeavor that promised to break the bond between himself and the sinister presence. With trembling hands, Lucas gathered the necessary ingredients and performed the arcane rite. His heart raced as he chanted the incantation, his voice mingling with the howling wind outside. In the final moments, the air crackled with an unseen energy, and a blinding light engulfed him. When the brilliance subsided, Lucas found himself back in his room, standing beside his bed. The oppressive weight that had plagued him for so long had lifted, and the room felt cleansed. The curse had been broken, but the memories of his dark journey lingered like ghosts. Though relieved, Lucas knew that some horrors could never truly be forgotten. The nights remained restless, haunted by shadows and the echoes of his own screams. He had survived the darkness, but it had left its mark, a reminder that some nightmares, once unleashed, never truly fade away. Maria had recently moved into a charming house nestled in a quiet neighborhood. The moment she set foot inside, she knew it was the perfect place to call home. The creaking floorboards and high ceilings gave it an old-world charm that she adored. Little did she know that within the walls of this seemingly idyllic dwelling, an ancient terror lay waiting. As weeks passed, Maria's contentment slowly turned to unease. It started subtly, a faint whisper in the corners of her mind. At first, she dismissed it as her imagination, a trick of the acoustics in an old house. But the whispers grew louder, and their sinister tone sent shivers down her spine. One evening, as Maria prepared dinner, the voices intensified. She dropped the knife, startled, and her gaze shifted toward the basement door. The whispers emanated from beneath her, luring her down into the depths of the house. Reluctantly, she descended the creaky stairs, her heart pounding with trepidation. The closer she got to the basement, the more the whispers turned into chilling laughter, a cacophony of sinister mirth that echoed through the air. Fear clawed at her, but an inexplicable force compelled her to continue. Finally, she reached the basement, where the oppressive darkness enveloped her like a suffocating blanket. Trembling, Maria fumbled for the light switch and bathed the room in a pale, flickering glow. What she saw froze her in terror. In the corner of the basement, concealed behind an old bookshelf, she discovered a hidden chamber. The chamber's stone walls were etched with occult symbols, and in its center, bound by ancient chains, was a grotesque creature, a demon. Its eyes glowed with an otherworldly fire, and its jagged teeth protruded from its wickedly grinning mouth. The demon's voice now filled the room, a venomous growl that slithered into Maria's mind. It reveled in her fear, relishing the opportunity to escape its confinement after centuries of imprisonment. It promised unspeakable horrors and a life forever haunted by its malevolence. Maria stumbled backward, desperate to escape the chamber and seal away the demonic presence once more. But as she turned to flee, the door slammed shut with a resounding thud, sealing her fate within the accursed basement. Days turned into nights, and Maria's screams echoed fruitlessly through the house. Her once vibrant spirit withered away as she became a mere vessel, shackled to the demon's will. The house, once filled with life and warmth, now exuded an unshakable sense of dread, a chilling reminder of the unholy pact that had been sealed within its very foundations. And so, Maria's story became another tragic tale of a woman ensnared by the darkness that lay hidden in her own home. The whispers, once dismissed as figments of her imagination, would now linger eternally, a haunting reminder of the demon that had been unleashed from its prison, a reminder that some secrets are better left undisturbed. The Johnson family was excited about their new home. It was a beautiful house nestled in a peaceful neighborhood, with a spacious backyard that held a mysterious secret, a well. They were intrigued by the ancient structure, its moss-covered stones whispering tales of the past. Little did they know that this well held a dark and sinister secret. As the Johnsons settled into their new home, strange things began to happen. The air grew heavy with an eerie presence, and the once happy atmosphere turned cold and foreboding. At night, whispers echoed through the house, chilling the family to their core. Unseen hands rattled doorknobs and slammed doors shut. Shadows danced on the walls, writhing in malicious delight. One evening, young Emily Johnson couldn't resist her curiosity any longer. She approached the well, drawn to its ominous presence like a moth to a flame. Peering into the depths, she saw a faint glimmer, a glimpse into another realm. Without warning, a cold wind swept through the backyard, extinguishing the lights and plunging the area into darkness. Terrified, Emily stumbled backward, but it was too late. The well had become a portal, and malevolent spirits spilled forth from its depths. The Johnsons watched in horror as the apparitions emerged, their twisted forms shimmering with malice. Wails of anguish filled the air, an unholy chorus that sent shivers down their spines. Desperate to protect their family, Mr. Johnson barricaded the house, but the spirits were relentless. They clawed at the doors, their ethereal fingers scraping against the wood, seeking entrance. The family huddled together, trembling with fear as the supernatural onslaught continued. Days turned into weeks, and the family's sanity began to fray. Sleep eluded them as haunting visions invaded their dreams. The spirits whispered malevolent secrets into their ears, their words laced with venomous intent. Each night, they were subjected to horrific nightmares, trapped in a realm where their deepest fears became a horrifying reality. Mrs. Johnson, driven to the brink of madness, decided to confront the spirits. Armed with ancient texts and talismans, she ventured into the backyard, facing the portal head-on. She recited incantations, pleading with the spirits to leave her family in peace. But the darkness laughed, mocking her feeble attempts. The battle between light and dark waged on, but the spirits grew stronger, their presence permeating every corner of the house. Desperation consumed the family as they realized that escape was impossible. The well had become their prison, a gateway to a realm of eternal torment. In the end, the Johnsons were consumed by the malevolent spirits that had invaded their lives. Their home stood empty, a cursed monument to the tragedy that unfolded within its walls. The well remained, a conduit to the realm of darkness, waiting patiently for its next victims. So, should you ever stumble upon a house with a well in the backyard, heed this cautionary tale. For within its depths, a portal to a realm of malevolent spirits lurks, ready to claim unsuspecting souls. In a small town shrouded in mystery, lived a reclusive writer named Samuel. With his unkempt hair and a perpetually gloomy expression, Samuel was known for his uncanny ability to craft bone-chilling horror stories. His tales were so vividly terrifying that readers often found themselves immersed in a world of terror and despair. But little did they know, there was a horrifying secret behind Samuel's gift. Samuel resided in an old, creaky house nestled deep within the woods. The dimly lit rooms were filled with stacks of weathered books, each one containing a story that had materialized into reality. The townsfolk whispered about the eerie occurrences surrounding Samuel, and the chilling truth that his stories were not mere works of fiction. One fateful night, as the moon cast an ominous glow upon the ink-stained pages, Samuel sat hunched over his desk, deep in thought. The scratching of his pen echoed through the silence as he meticulously crafted a new tale, oblivious to the weight of his words. In his story, a malevolent spirit haunted an unsuspecting family, tormenting them with its macabre presence. Samuel's imagination conjured vivid descriptions of ghostly apparitions, blood-curdling screams, and inexplicable horrors that lurked in the shadows. Unbeknownst to him, each word etched onto the paper ignited a malevolent force, slowly bridging the gap between fiction and reality. As the last sentence flowed from his pen, a chill ran down Samuel's spine. The room grew unnaturally cold, and the faint sound of whispers filled the air. A sense of dread hung heavy, suffocating his thoughts. He peered out of the window, only to see the moon obscured by a foreboding blanket of clouds. Suddenly, a spectral figure materialized before him, emanating an otherworldly glow. It was the very embodiment of the malevolent spirit he had conjured. Samuel's heart raced, and panic consumed him as he realized the terrible power his words held. The lines between his stories and reality had blurred, and he was trapped in a nightmare of his own creation. The vengeful spirit, now freed from the confines of the written word, began its reign of terror upon Samuel. His house became a twisted labyrinth, shifting and contorting with each step he took. The once familiar hallways morphed into winding tunnels, leading him deeper into a realm of unimaginable horror. Every story he had ever written manifested itself, tormenting him with relentless ferocity. Creatures from the darkest corners of his mind stalked his every move, their haunting cries reverberating through the night. Samuel's sanity crumbled under the weight of his own creations, and his screams were swallowed by the abyss. Days turned into an eternity as Samuel fought for his life within the twisted realm of his stories. His torment knew no respite, and his hope dwindled with each passing moment. The line between author and protagonist had blurred beyond recognition, leaving him trapped in an eternal nightmare of his own making. In the end, it was his final story that became his ultimate undoing. As he penned his own demise, the world around him disintegrated into a vortex of darkness, consuming him whole. Samuel's fate was sealed, forever condemned to wander within the realm of his own twisted imagination, forever haunted by the horrors he once wrote. And so, the cautionary tale of Samuel, the writer whose words bore terrible consequences, became a chilling legend whispered among aspiring authors. A reminder that within the depths of imagination lies a power so immense, it can transform even the most innocuous of stories into a horrifying reality.